Roll up, ladies and gentlemen. Come join us at the Funfair and the circus today and improve your English vocabulary with
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hi, I'm Reza.
And my name's Craig.
And with 50 years of teaching between us, we'll help you improve your English and take it to the next level. How are you doing, Craig?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And if you're a new listener to the podcast, you're very, very welcome. And if you've come back to listen again, thank you very much. It's been a good week. I've enjoyed this week, and I'm really looking forward to podcasting again about the circus and fun fairs.
Yes, that's why I started with the words roll up, roll up. You might be thinking, what on earth is that about? Is he rolling something along the ground? No, it's an old-fashioned expression, but it's still used today. Traditionally at the circus or for funfair, whenever somebody's doing something and they want you to come and have a look, come closer, come and have a look, you're going to enjoy this, they say roll up, roll up.
Reza, did you go to the circus when you were younger, or the fair?
Yes, to the fair quite a few times, the circus a couple of times, but I think basically that's because my parents were a bit stingy and it was more expensive to go to the circus.
What does stingy mean?
Stingy, S-T-I-N-G-Y, means you don't like to spend money. So it was quite expensive to go to the circus, and because they were stingy, they went more to the fun fair, because there's a slight difference, as you'll see in a minute.
Yeah, I remember going to the fun fair quite often, as you did, and the circus maybe once, but when I was very, very young, so I don't have very clear memories about it. What was your favourite thing at the fun fair, or amusement park, you could say?
My favourite thing at the fun fair, I guess the shooting alley. So they gave you a rifle, thankfully not a real one, a rifle which had some kind of pellets in it. And you aimed, to aim, A-I-M, so look at the target, and you pulled the trigger. And if you hit the target, you got a prize. Very simple, but everybody loves that, don't they? Did you like that?
I did, but did you ever win a prize? Because I never did, and I thought it was fixed, which means it was deliberately arranged for nobody to win. It was a rip-off. They took your money and nobody ever won anything. Was that your experience?
I think so. I'm convinced they had the guns altered in some way. I bet they didn't shoot straight.
Or they stuck the things with super glue so that they couldn't be shot off the shelf at the back. But my favourite thing at the fair were the bumper cars. The bumper cars, B-U-M-P-E-R, because you bumped your car into other cars. You also might know this as the dodgems, because dodge means to avoid. So dodgems, D-O-D-G-E-M-S, you try to avoid people bumping your car. And that was definitely my favourite thing.
So it's a mixture of you trying to bump into other people and also dodge them. So that's why you can say either, right? Bumper cars or dodgems.
Yeah, and the secret was to try and get as much speed as possible before you bumped another car. So the impact would be as strong as possible. Great fun.
And sometimes I remember it being quite painful, particularly if it was a head-on collision. Head-on, face to face. So both coming exactly in a straight line and hitting each other. That was quite painful sometimes, wasn't it?
The cars used to leave the ground and go in the air and come back down again. It was quite hard.
If you got hit from the side, a side-on collision, it wasn't so bad, but a head-on collision, you could damage yourself quite easily. And I remember there was the danger, it didn't happen to me, but I saw it happen to other people, the danger if you had your arm kind of hanging off the side. Yeah. If somebody squashed into you, could get your hand squashed. Really painful, excruciatingly painful. In fact,
you could easily break your arm. And what a contrast between bumper cars and the carousel. The carousel is usually horses that go round and round very slowly with music. Another name for the carousel is a merry-go-round. a merry-go-round, and it went quite slow, and maybe the horses and the other carriages went up and down, but it was a bit boring, wasn't it?
To be honest, I thought, not now, but I thought, that's for girls. That's a bit poncy, that one. But
Poncy?
Poncy's like, it's for softies or soft people or girls, as stupid boys think. I thought that one's for the girls. Pretty Little Ponies and all that. No, I want to get in the bumper car and try to make someone have an accident.
Yeah, probably more for younger children. Now, when we speak about different topics, and today we're speaking about the circus, it's unusual for us to speak about something and not mention food. So what are some of the typical things you can eat at the fair in the UK?
Well, basically anything sweet, so chocolate bar sweets, all of that, but especially candy floss. Candy floss. So candy is more typical in American English. Candy just means sweet things, typically for children. And floss, well, you've maybe heard of dental floss. So Floss. Dental floss is something you put between your teeth to clean them. Don't use candy floss to clean your teeth. It's not going to work because it's 100% sugar.
Yeah.
A warning, do not use candy floss to clean your teeth. Use dental floss. Candy floss will make you lose your teeth because it's basically sugar which gets put into a machine which goes round and round and round and round, and then it puffs up. To puff, Puff, it like somehow gets full of air and expands, and you get this thing which looks a bit like cotton wool in a big kind of ball or like a little cloud of cotton wool, but it's mostly air and then loads of sugar. Not good for you at all.
No, and speaking of things that are bad for your teeth, I can remember eating a toffee apple, or trying to eat a toffee apple, which is an apple covered with really hard caramel toffee, and almost breaking my teeth because it's really hard to bite, also full of sugar. So not the healthiest of food options at the fair.
Yeah, take it from me. Any of you who are currently wearing a brace or Invisalign, do not attempt to eat a toffee apple. Don't do it.
One thing I did enjoy at the fair were slot machines, SLOT, slot machines, which you can also play in an amusement arcade. You know, those places where you go in and there are different machines for you to spend, or some people might say waste their money, arcade games. Did you ever play slot machines?
I did, and I liked going to amusement arcades. I think their heyday, that's H-E-Y, day, their heyday, that means when they were at the peak of their popularity, was kind of the 80s, maybe early 90s. Amusement arcades were very popular. You don't see so many now, do you?
No, but there are people in my area in Valencia where I live who love going to bars and playing slot machines, and I see it very often. I've never really enjoyed that because it's really a way of gambling and basically wasting your money. But they are quite popular in Spanish bars, slot machines.
As a teenager, I liked playing things like Space Invaders, one of the very early arcade games. So you don't bet, you just put in money and then you play a game. You've got to defend yourself from the invaders from space. You probably get 3 lives. And once your 3rd life's up, that's it. So I liked that type of slot machine. Not the betting type, but the arcade game.
Yeah, me too. Now, anyone listening who has been to London may have seen or even gone on the London Eye. The London Eye, next to the Thames River, is a huge Ferris wheel, Ferris, or what I used to call it, a big wheel, and you often found big wheels at fun fairs and amusement parks. Have you ever been on the London Eye?
I have. I was on it once. It was spectacular.
It's quite good. If you get a nice day and it's not cloudy, it's beautiful.
Very good view. Another ride I like, you can call things like a Ferris wheel, a big wheel, a ride, is a roller coaster. What do you call in Spanish, if you're a Spanish speaker? A montaña rusa. But
a Russian mountain.
A Russian mountain, yeah, but we don't in English. It's a roller coaster. I guess it's the idea that it's a vehicle which rolls around it, and it coasts. If you coast, it's kind of you move from one place to the other, taking it easy. Maybe that's where it gets its name from. It's a roller coaster. And some roller coasters are particularly dramatic if they loop the loop. Some of them actually go up vertical, turn over, so you're upside down. That means your head is under your feet. And then it comes round the right way again. So some roller coasters loop the loop. Have you ever looped the loop?
No, I haven't been on many roller coasters in my life, maybe one or two, just I haven't had the opportunity. But one thing I did really enjoy when I was a kid was going on something a bit less dramatic at the fair called a Helter Skelter. And remember, to see this vocabulary, go to the website, inglespodcast.com/434. The Helter Skelter was a lot of fun. It turned around in like a snail pattern from the top to the bottom. You climbed a ladder to the top, and then you sat on maybe a mat, similar to what you'd have outside your door to wipe your feet. Or maybe you'd sit on a sack, which is something that coffee is often transported in, and you would slide down and around this helter-skelter to the bottom. I used to love that.
A thing which I really loved was the ghost train. So when you're talking about an amusement park, a ghost train is not a rail train, it's like a miniature train, and it's indoors, it's not outside, and it'll be in an area which is mostly dark. So you're in this little miniature train, it's mostly dark, but every few seconds something frightening appears. So Frankenstein, Dracula, somebody who's cutting somebody else's head off, or some other horrible thing, and it looks like they're coming to get you, and they seem to get so close, and then the train turns away and you narrowly avoid them. That type of thing. I loved the ghost train.
And it looked like you were going through a spider's web, or something would touch your face. It suddenly got really dark and you'd feel something on your face as though someone was grabbing you. Yeah, very scary.
And if you were sitting beside someone, you could really scare them by touching them. So wait till you get close up to Dracula and then grab your friend's throat and they think, oh my God, Dracula's got my throat, I'm going to die. Did you ever do that type of thing?
No, I was a good boy. Speaking of scary things, unfortunately, there was a really, really bad accident recently in Spain at the beginning of the summer. I don't know if you heard about this, Reza, but a young boy died on a bouncy castle. Did you hear that?
I did hear about that, yes. I can't remember the exact details, but I know that sadly, every year there's always some accident which usually ends up in a death involving a bouncy castle. So they're more dangerous than they appear.
What are bouncy castles? To bounce, you bounce a ball, don't you?
Yes, so to bounce something, it goes up and down. So if you let a ball drop, a basketball, for example, let it drop on the floor, and it will bounce up again back into your hand. So it's not a real castle, it's an inflatable castle. It's a castle made of rubber, which has air in it. So you can bounce on it. If you jump on it, you'll go up into the air. So of course, kids love jumping up and down on these bouncy castles.
Another thing I used to enjoy was something called the Hall of Mirrors. The hall is a big space or a long space, and in this interior space there were different mirrors. Now, mirrors show a reflection of the person looking into it, but these mirrors distorted your image. So you might seem extremely fat or extremely short or extremely tall. And I thought I had one of these mirrors in my bathroom yesterday because I looked in my normal mirror and I looked extremely fat and my face was really puffy and old. And I thought, hey, I've got one of these strange mirrors in my house, but it was the normal one.
Oh dear, did you frighten yourself?
It scared the life out of me. It was worse than the ghost train. Reza, have you ever been on a water slide?
I have, not often, but I have once or twice. The thing about water slides for me is I don't really want to go on one in a cold country because there's a good chance of getting wet. So in Spain in the summer, I would be happy to go on a water slide. But in Ireland in the winter, I would think twice about it.
Yeah, me too. Wouldn't be very nice. Let's move from the funfair or the amusement park over to the circus, which I'm less familiar with because I didn't really go to the circus very often as a child. So obviously you know what a circus is, but it can be used as an idiom, can't it, Reza?
Yes, because the circus has been around for a long time. It's not a new idea, so several idioms have grown up around it. So the word circus in itself can be used in an idiomatic way. So the real meaning of the circus is this place where you go to see the performers, but it can also mean just a place or a situation where everything is confused or noisy. Nobody knows exactly what's going on. It's not properly organized. There's things happening all over the place.
A bit like the British government, really.
Yes, at the moment, right. So you might hear expressions in the news such as a media circus. Don't worry, there aren't performers from the circus in the media, but what that means is that they're making up stories or saying crazy things, or they won't leave these famous people in peace, and it's just chaos. So you might hear that this situation could turn into a media circus. It's out of control, it's chaotic, there's things going on all over the place.
Yeah, that's an idiom we often find when politics is being discussed. The circus can also be known as the Big Top, T-O-P, and it's a huge round tent, the Big Top, and of course the actual area where you see the acts inside is also round. We call it a ring, and the person who is your compere, who introduces the acts, and it's usually someone with a top hat, maybe a suit, looking very smart, very formal. That's the ringmaster.
Yes, because if you think about it, a circus is normally a circle. In fact, the words are connected. So it's a ring, it's a circle, it's a circus. Circus, circle, there's a connection between the words.
Piccadilly Circus.
So that's why you have the ringmaster. Other people you'll find at the circus include acrobats. So as I'm sure most of you know, an acrobat is a person who can do amazing and impressive things with their body that most of us can't do. Another type of performer you'll see at the circus is a trapeze artist. So the trapeze is this thing which hangs from high up, and it goes from one side to the other, and you can sit on it, or you can hang from it if you know what you're doing, and jump from one to another, or jump up in the air and then catch it again, and all sorts of combinations. If you do that, you're a trapeze artist.
But it's not only the trapeze artists that are way high up at the top of the Big Top. You might also see, if you look up, a tightrope walker. So as the name suggests, this person walks along a rope, which if you're a Spanish speaker, una cuerda, and tries not to fall off of the rope. So they've usually got this long pole that they use to walk along the rope, and it's a very skillful thing to be able to do, to walk along a very, very thin rope so high up in the air. And that's another thing we can use as an idiom. If you walk a tightrope, or you could say to tread a tightrope, T-R-E-A-D, that means that you are doing something that's very risky, that's not sure, that's not secure. Let me give you an example. Many manufacturers have to walk a tightrope between pricing their goods too high and not selling them, and pricing them low and maybe losing money. So that's a kind of tightrope. Where do you price your product so that you can make money and not lose money? Maybe they're walking a tightrope.
There's another type of specialized walking which needs a lot of training to do, and you might see it at the circus, a stilt walker. So they walk on stilts, S-T-I-L-T. So a stilt is like a long, usually wooden pole with a little ledge, L-E-D-G-E, that's a little bit cut out where you can put your feet. So it makes you look much, much, much taller. than you are. So you're not walking on the ground. You might have 2, 3, 4, 5 meters below you on the ground, and you're walking on these stilts. You're a stilt walker.
And 2 acts that involve weapons you might see at a circus. One is a knife thrower, a person who throws knives at their assistant and skillfully manages to miss, we hope, the assistant's body. Or a sword swallower, a person who swallows a sword.
Craig, of all those performers, acrobats, trapeze artists, tightrope walkers, stilt walkers, knife throwers, and sword swallowers, who do you think takes the biggest risk?
The sword swallower, they probably use a trick sword, I would think. Maybe something that collapses and doesn't go down their throat. There's no way they're going to put a sword in their mouth and down into their stomach. So I think the knife thrower's assistant takes the biggest risk. And sometimes they even throw axes, A-X-E. An axe, if you're a Spanish speaker, is hacha. They might throw that at the assistant, and that could take your head off.
Yes. Traditionally, though not always, the knife thrower is a man, and he will often introduce his beautiful or glamorous assistant. Who will be a rather attractive lady. But she's the one who takes the big risk, because he's throwing the knife. Nothing's going to happen to him if it goes wrong. It's this beautiful lady who we really don't want to see with a knife in her. She's the one who's taking the big risk.
Yep, absolutely.
Mind you means also you have to consider a tightrope walker takes a big risk, and a trapeze artist. They'll probably want to have a safety net below them. Now, what is a safety net, Craig?
A net you might use if you go fishing. A net, if you're a Spanish speaker, is red. And that's something that hopefully will catch, or we can say break the fall of the tightrope walker if he or she falls to the ground. A safety net. We also have an idiom using that. You could say that the welfare system, for example, was set up or founded to provide a safety net for the poor. If you're down on your luck, if you don't have much money, if you lose your job, there's a safety net there for you to kind of idiomatically catch you and stop you falling into poverty. So a safety net is something that stops you having a disaster.
Now, the circus just wouldn't be the circus without clowns, would it? C-L-O-W-N, a clown. We've all seen clowns. Those are those people who usually wear very, very bright, very eye-catching makeup. So, for example, they might have their face painted white. They might have a big artificial red nose stuck on the end of their real nose. They probably have the lips painted a strange color, some strange colors around their eyes, etc. Maybe big false ears, maybe really, really, really big shoes, which are far bigger than they really need. Everything to look a bit silly, a bit crazy, to look like a clown.
Actually, my grandfather was a clown in a circus. And when he died, all of the family went to the funeral in the same car.
Yes, of course. I see what you're saying. That, of course, is a typical act. It's one of the things that clowns do, isn't it?
Yep. And sometimes Reza and I clown around on the podcast like that. We make jokes, we're silly, we're clowning around. That phrasal verb means to be a bit silly. A teacher might say to the student, hey, stop clowning around at the back of the class and do some work.
So if you call a person a clown who isn't really a clown, so imagine we're not at the circus, we're in a different environment, and I say to you, do you know Bob? He's such a clown. I'm not saying he works in a circus. I'm saying maybe he's silly, or maybe he's clumsy. He's clumsy. He seems to drop things, or he never holds things correctly, or bumps into things, or he'll spill coffee on an important document or something like that. Or he's just really unprofessional. He says he'll do something, but he doesn't. Or you're trying to explain something which is really serious, and he doesn't seem to see that it's really serious. All that type of thing. we call people like that clowns in an idiomatic way.
So if you heard the expression, Reza, send in the clowns, what do you understand by that?
Well, that expression, it originally comes from the theatre, not necessarily the circus, from the theatre, so from serious theatre. Whenever the performance went badly wrong, when they got things wrong, they used to say, send in the clowns. So there were clowns waiting to come in to draw people's attention away from the fact that the performance wasn't going well.
As a distraction.
As a distraction. So they came and did silly things. Oh, look at us. We've got big noses. There's 25 of us in a car. We're throwing water at each other. We're really silly. So people hopefully started to laugh, and they forgot that the real performance, which was interrupted, was going badly wrong. So send in the clowns refers to that.
Do you think clowns are scary?
In a way, yes.
I do.
I've always found them a mixture of funny and scary. And I think they're supposed to be. That's kind of the idea. When they get up close to you sometimes and their face is close to yours, you think, oh, wow, he's a bit scary. But then they'll do something like they'll produce a custard pie. Yeah, custard, yeah, una empanada de natillas. And they'll like stick it on your face or somebody else's face. And then you laugh. But there's a fine balance, isn't there, between the scariness and the humor, isn't there?
Yeah, they're walking a tightrope, aren't they? Yeah, clowns. Another act that might be sent onto the stage or into the ring if you're at the circus, if something goes wrong, is a juggler. A juggler, Juggler, is a person who throws things up in the air and catches them again. And that's something we often see here in Valencia when you stop at the traffic lights. A juggler will come out in front of the car, throw things up in the air, maybe 5 or 6 tennis balls, and try to catch them, and usually drop them, and you give them €1 or not. So that's the juggler.
And depending on what they're using to juggle with, that can be dangerous. If it's just balls, it's not very dangerous. But sometimes they use knives. And the idea is to catch the knife by the handle, the bit where you put your hand. But what if they catch it by the blade, the bit that cuts? Well, then they could cut the hand. Or sometimes they use like torches, lit torches. And the idea again is to catch it by the handle, not catch it where the fire is. So it can be dangerous.
Yeah, and when Reza uses the word torch, he doesn't mean with batteries inside. He means with actual fire on the end of a stick. And that's also something that a fire eater would use. Maybe we can group fire eaters with knife throwers, sword swallowers, those dangerous acts.
What about a human cannonball? Have you ever seen one of those?
I used to be a human cannonball and then I got fired. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Oh dear, oh dear.
They're getting worse, aren't
lower
they?
can we get? So a cannon, I'm sure you know, is a big gun, a piece of artillery, and it fires a ball, right? A cannonball. But what if instead of a ball, you put a human in the cannon and you fire that person? That's a human cannonball. So apparently, in the past, it doesn't happen much now. Nowadays, they used to put a human in the barrel of a cannon, ignite the cannon, and the explosion would make this human cannonball fly through the air.
Also in the group of dangerous and dramatic acts is the Lion Tamer. And if you tame an animal, then you change it from being a wild animal to a domesticated, tame animal that does what you want it to do. So lion tamers traditionally have a chair and maybe a whip, WHIP, that makes a noise when you crack it. They crack the whip and try to tame the lion and make it docile and friendly.
I guess you could argue that that's potentially the most dangerous of all. Because if the lion really wants to eat you, it will. It's just, you just hope that psychologically the lion tamer has the upper hand. Because if that lion wants to kill you, you're dead. There's no doubt about it. The lion tamer just depends on the fact that he's the boss. But if for a split second that situation changes, he's dead. It's very, very dangerous, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
What about a contortionist, Craig? Have you ever seen one perform live?
Yeah, in fact, my sister was a contortionist, but she lost the job because she could only work on Tuesdays. She wasn't very flexible. But I know... But I know that some people, especially these days with high unemployment, are bending over to become contortionists.
He's on a roll today. He's on a roll.
Roll up, roll up. I'm here all week.
So obviously, a contortionist is a person who can contort, that's the verb, their body. Do strange things with it. Do things you're not supposed to be able to do with it, like fit themselves in a small bag or something like that. Another thing which in theory you shouldn't be able to do, but some people can, is to lie on a bed of nails. So nails are clavos, but not the type you eat, the type you use to put into wood with a hammer. So some people can lie on a bed of nails and not get cut. Have you ever tried it, Craig?
I never really got the point to that. So I never really tried it, no.
Craig is unstoppable today. He's unstoppable. And last but not least, a pretty old-fashioned act. Don't know if you see it much these days, but you used to see the Indian rope trick. Do you know what that is?
Yes, there's a rope that appears and probably an Indian person would climb up it. Is that correct?
But where is the rope being held, being supported?
I think it's an illusion, so you don't actually see the rope tied onto anything. Is that right? I'm struggling to remember, but I don't think you can actually see it's kind of hovering or suspended in midair, so there's nothing it's tied to. It's just a rope that's floating.
That's the trick, because anybody can climb up a rope, but it doesn't seem to be suspended from anywhere. This performer will just throw it up into the air, and somehow it stays there in the air, apparently, and they climb up it. But who's holding it above? Apparently nobody.
Yeah, very impressive. Well, now it's your turn to practice your English, and I'll tell you something, you don't need a safety net to practice your speaking because you can send us a voice message. How can people do that, Reza?
If you have a look at the show notes, you'll see a link to speakpipe.com/English podcast, and there you can record your voice in audio with a maximum of up to 90 seconds. If you don't want to speak, if you're still a bit shy, I guess you could write. You could send an email to Craig@EnglishPodcast.com or to me, BelfastReza@gmail.com.
And if you would like a paid course to help you improve your English, go to the Mansion English website and have a look at our courses. Go to store.mansioningles.net. As
always, we'd like to thank the people who help us by supporting the podcast on Patreon. That's Patreon. And those people have joined the scheme for as little as $1.20 per month. And because they donate money to the podcast, as a thank you, we give them instant access to recent audio transcriptions. If you're interested, have a look at the link in the show notes. Go to patreon.com/English podcast.
Unfortunately, we don't have time to thank each of you individually. There are just too many people on the list, but we would like to say a big thank you to recent supporters of the podcast, and they are Eugenia Gil and Esteban. Thank you very much to you and to everybody who is supporting us and continuing to support us on Patreon.
Craig, what have we got on next week's episode?
I have no idea, and like a professional juggler, we will be juggling episodes. We will definitely bring you an episode next Sunday, so keep listening, but we're not sure what the topic is, and if you have any ideas, we would love to hear from you, so send us a voice message. Until next time, thanks for listening this week. It's goodbye from Reza.
And it's goodbye from Craig.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.